Lynn. We have got two other councillors here as well. In the background, hello. How are you doing? Keith and Chris. Keith is on the local plan committee. So when we get to that point, I might ask you a question or two, Keith, if you don't mind. Now, we've also got some help on the MPPF from the chair of the London Greenbelt Council, Richard. He's down at the front. I'll get Richard up at the right point. And then we've got three, I think, of the core Clash team. But we're all at it. It feels like we're all at it all the time at the minute, doesn't it? It feels as though we've been totally swamped this summer, that we haven't been able to catch a breath. But luckily, I think we feel we've got the right strategy, which is the expert evidence base. And that's what I want to allow us to fill you in on, because many of you will have donated to our various fundraisers, so thank you very much for that. And also allow you to ask us questions about that and how we go forward. And you know, if you are in our camp, you know, how you could possibly help, what you could do, etc., etc. So I can see some familiar faces and some new faces, so thank you for joining us if you are new. Now, I've got a couple of questions, and it comes back to this MPPF. What is our real housing need? Now, there are a couple of definitions around the housing calculation and the change of that, but the only way to satisfy the government of our real housing need is for our council to put forward a case for it. So we do have, Lynn's right, we do have a standard method, a calculation, which is, you know, a series of numbers. The numbers at the minute in the current methodology are giving us, oh, I've got the wrong colour there. Let's go. Current methodology, no? Let me choose a different pen. Hold on. Yeah, that one will do.
Yes, but a lot of people want to live in the town where they've got the services. They don't want to stuck out in the country.
Yeah, Ian, I totally agree. But our current methodology gives us 15,000, and as Lynn alluded to, if the Labour methodology is adopted in, let's say, 6 months' time, that's going to give us 26,000 if it's adopted. So it's not 100% that it's adopted. Now, is that our real housing need? I think most of us would agree that nearly 40% extra housing is probably not our real housing need. On top of that, the definition of need is an objectively assessed need. So that number will also be assessed by the planning inspector. It hasn't been assessed yet. It goes forward as part of our, what we call the Regulation 19 application. So our objectively assessed need hasn't been assessed. We have the opportunity, because of what is called a constraint, and the constraint is Greenbelt, to say to the council, say to the planning inspector, say to the government, we're going to struggle to deliver that. Or if we deliver it, there's going to be such a big impact, and we really need to deliver a different number. And by the way, this is our population. This is the number of people on our housing register, and a lot of our housing is actually sold outside, so of the local existing population. I don't ever think that that's a bad thing, but that's the real situation. That's where we are, and we have to think about that more strategically. And that's one thing that the new MPPF does do, is it brings back what we call strategic planning. And I have quite a few of you, maybe not in this room, but certainly of our supporters, email me and say, have you seen this massive site that's doing nothing in, let's say, Luton or Stevenage? Have you seen this in North London that's completely empty? Why is that not being converted into housing? And that type of brownfield development is incredibly important. We need to think about it as a region and as a strategic allocation. And we, Clash, are of the opinion that hasn't happened yet. It hasn't happened strong enough. We have the Southwest Hertfordshire Strategic Group. Luton feed into it a bit, London feed into it a bit, but not enough. And the Brownfield Register in St Albans hasn't been updated since 2001. And we're asking that really needs to be updated, so I'll give you some details on that a bit later. So our housing need is still a question mark, right? We haven't had the inspectors approve that number. That number is calculated by a standard method that can be flexed and changed based on all these factors, and demographics as well. And that's, I guess, we have a big problem with trying to deliver all of it. Hi.
Sorry, just getting back to the first thing, what is our real housing need?
Yeah.
Shouldn't that be affordable housing?
I think it should.
I mean, I've got kids who are of that age to move on, they're adults. There's no way in hell they'll be able to afford to buy anything in or around St Albans. Surely that should be what is our real affordable housing need.
Yeah, and at the minute, the affordable housing element comes later. It's not part of our initial housing need assessment.
I've got somebody who's been trying to move to St Albans from slightly outside, not London.
Yeah.
I know,
And
you're wrong.
all the houses are being bought by Londoners, by people moving from overseas, because it seems a good deal.
The situation of this site means that you've got to be two car owners.
You do.
Because otherwise you're stuck at home.
Yeah, you
You've
do.
got no services.
So let's come back to the travel in a minute and the transport. Yeah, I agree.
Let's face it, it's got no station.
It's got no station. There's no walking. In fact, we have it in writing, actually, that this is not walking distance to the station. It's there in black and white. It came out on Thursday from the assessments that are part of the local plan. Coming back to your point about affordable housing, can more housing lower house prices? Property doesn't work on simple supply and demand, right? So Economics 101, which says more supply means lower prices, just does not work like that. And the delivery of this is phased over 15 years. Each developer won't build houses to crash their own house price. Other things do drive house prices at what we call a macro level, that's interest rates. We've seen that the last 3 years of high interest rates. So building more houses absolutely does not reduce house prices. What it might do is it might stabilise them. They might stay where they are for a longer period of time because you are feeding into that supply from, as you say, and we actually have in part of our group a former estate agent, which is quite useful, who buys and sells, used to advise buying and selling around here. And basically, St Albans, if you can sell your house in London for 900,000, you can buy the same house here for 600,000 to 700,000. So you will take out equity. And guess what? You can probably get into London at around the same time. And it's that dynamic that we have, and hence that pressure that we have.
And that's basically what they're calling affordable houses. It's affordable housing for people coming from London who are able to capitalise on that by the same property as a property for less money. It's not affordable for anybody here.
So the affordable housing definition is as a percentage of the local house price. Some developers say, oh, we'll take a percentage off the area house price. Local or area, I don't think it makes much of a difference here. It's still going to be a high number. And then it will be discounted on, say, 1 or 2 bedroom properties. And we've seen that.
With a lot of landlords buying places.
So, in fact, that's exactly the proposal at the minute, that the majority of the affordable housing will be under affordable rent. And the affordable rent will be controlled by housing association landlords. And, you can go off and read about their practices.
So learn to build upwards so that people get their services, they have the training available, etc. You've got to build upwards in St Albans, not spread out in St Albans. It makes sense.
And another factor of that is how many empty houses and properties to live in do we have at the minute. I did a quick search last night on Rightmove. I just put a 5-mile radius of the council offices. There are 1,500 houses for sale. I didn't look at each one. I can't tell you exactly the price of each one, but I know there are 1,500. And there were 400 and something like 68 houses for rent. So I don't know how that compares 2 areas in London, but I know that that's what's on the market at the minute. And certainly within the site, within 500 metres of the site, we have 6 houses, 4 of which are empty, and 2 of which haven't sold in, I think it's 18 months, one's on Sandwich Lane. And then we've got another 4 or 5 houses that can't sell. We've got new, it's called the Greens, isn't it? The Greens on the edge of the site. We've got number 19, Sandwich Lane. Everyone's moving, wants to move for personal reasons. Nothing of this is about, not wanting to live here because of the development. And they just can't shift. They cannot sell. So this idea that we are having to build into the crisis to lower houses doesn't hold. Our housing need can only be defined by our council, and that will come in with more details around the MPPF and how it really works. And it's taken me years to get my head around some of this. It's taken me a long time to appreciate who holds all the cards. And our council hold all the cards. Our council officers hold the cards. They are the only ones, when it comes to the MPPF, who can submit, who can accept evidence, who are able to take on board our views. Our councillors represent us and can represent our evidence. Our councillors but are then guided by what the officers say. And it's very difficult. If councillors go against the officer recommendation, then what happens? We end up probably in an appeal process with developers. They have lots of money to spend, we've seen that, and our council can't really afford to do that. No council can really afford to do that. And it's really challenging. So the next 2 weeks, is it 2 or 3 weeks, I forget. Keith, is it 2 or 3 weeks for the MPPF meetings?
24th of September is when
that's the final one, isn't it?
Consultation closes.
Yeah. Oh, so that's when the MPPF consultation closes, and then what's our second local plan site?
It's end of September.
End of September. I think it's 26th, isn't it? So we're coming up for about 3 weeks, aren't we? So we've only got 3 weeks to make officers understand our evidence, but also the fact that we really, really think if they carry on down this path, we'll end up with another failed local plan. And none of us want that. We want a sound local plan. So, hang on a minute. Didn't mean to do
It's a
that.
crazy policy because we at present import over 50% of our food. And we need farmland, and we're in a crisis over climate. And the worst thing we can possibly do is start using up all our land for building.
And actually,
people want their services, and so they must.
Excuse me, can I just raise, can we please leave comments and questions till the end as was asked earlier?
happy to take a couple of questions, but maybe we'll gather comments.
Gee, we're better at the end because then I can move the audio.
Great.
Your comments are great, but they're not being picked up, so no one's going to hear them if they listen to this. So later on I can move around with the audio.
Good idea.
Better if we kept them to the end. Thanks.
Thank you. Ian, remember those comments. We'll get them again. But farmland, our Greenbelt is farmland. We've had a pre-application meeting. Mark, you attended that on our behalf. And it was agreed that none of North St Albans is grey belt. So we don't have to worry about that definition at all. And it's obvious. Go for a walk, you'll see. Grey belt is previously developed land, land that's not useful for farmland. And we have excellent open government sources that show you the grading of farmland. All the farmland is grade 2. That's the best you get in our area. The only better than that is up in Lincolnshire that have grade 1. But, ours is grade 2, which is... And you can see that. Some of you might know. The Burrows family, they have farmed it for generations. They put a lot of effort in. We see all the trucks go by with all the organic matter, and we see the quality of the crop, and we're very lucky to have that. So our 4 unmet challenges for North St Albans, and the 4 that we are evidencing as much as we can with the funds that we have are, it's green belt, it's not grey belt. It is high quality green belt as well. It meets all of the green belt 5 provisions. It's next to Hartwood Forest. And I know that some of you are really passionate about that Hartwood is taken 16 years to establish. We've got loads of wonderful data. We've got online our Hartwood Halo survey. Damien, this keeps losing. You might have to keep pressing it for me. There we go. You keep pressing it for me. Thank you. So our Hartwood Halo presentation documents the birds that we found. It's amazing. We found cuckoos just outside our back garden, which is fantastic. And we are part of the Hartwood Halo, so it's great. Mark, you sent us loads of stuff. We've got the badgers, we've got the bats, we've got the works to say that this is really high quality natural land. And then the flooding. So before we get onto highways, this is a flood zone. It's in our Hartwood Halo presentation. You probably think there's no river. Well, where is our river? Where is our water? It's all underground, right? It's our aquifer. And those of you that have walked it, you see it's in a valley shape. And we have a clear definition. DEFRA are aware of this. The Environment Agency are aware of this. The Lead Local Flood Authority are aware of this. And what the Lead Local Flood Authority have said in the Woolham's application is that our site, along with all the other sites in the local plan, need to be assessed on flooding on a ranked basis. It's called sequential testing. But they need to be ranked. And any site that floods should be the last to be developed. It shouldn't be the case of, we can provide this provision or that provision and this pumping station and that green-blue highway and blah-de-blah-de-blah. It just should not be part of our first release of Greenbelt, if ever. We haven't seen the sequential testing yet. Now, we've still got the flood assessment side to come in terms of the evidence base, and I'm hoping that that's released around the 18th, 19th. It's normally released about a week before the final meeting. We haven't seen it, but we know that the Lead Local Flood Authority has asked for it. And we need to make those site selections with that data in mind. That's up there. That's like when Lynn was saying there's a process. Well, guess what? That's like number 2 on the process. So we can't sidestep that. It's super important.
Are you sure on that one?
Yeah.
Did you check last night? Because there is stuff about flooding.
Yeah, if you have a look at the Lead Local Flood Authority for the Woolham's application, you'll see the sequential test.
The Carla Holmes one.
So the Carla Holmes one, they've actually not discharged the conditions because the flood isn't managed properly.
There's rainfall modelling, and there's the details of the pump station and 4 flood risk assessments.
Okay, so you need to look at, it's called LLFA, it's just the acronym, and it's on the, I think, 22nd of August?
Yeah.
And if you have a read of that, you'll see, penultimate sentence, we're not discharging these conditions. Oh, and by the way, you can't put the road where you put the road because that's in the flood lane. And by the way, your pumping station didn't work. So they've put that in for Carla. Helpfully, means we haven't had to pay for that expert yet. But they seem to be a very, very capable group at Herts County Council. And I have a lot of faith in what they do because they are taking a very appropriate and scientific and measured approach and following the MPPF as it should be and interpreting it as it should be. The thing about policy is open to interpretation. So we talk about rules in the MPPF. There are some MPPG guidelines, rules. MPPF is policy. We all know what happens with interpretation. It can be like this, can't it? And we need it to be the best interpretation that it can. And then finally, of our 4 is highways. And by far, that is the thing that impacts most people most often on a daily basis. We had a meeting with the Woolham's land agents this week, here in this room, after the presentation. We've been trying to get hold of them for a while. We finally managed to get it to work. And I have to say, I think all of us that were there came away really depressed. Right. Why was I depressed? I was depressed because I was effectively talking to somebody who claimed to be a technical expert for highways and transport, that, you know, our leading school, St Albans School, is our leading educational institution, whether it's, you know, private or not is irrelevant. It's, you know, and they are basically stringing them along. That's what I've concluded. It's absolutely shocking. And I came away utterly depressed because this chap spoke about how a modal shift, which is a technical term for us all getting out of our cars and onto a bike, was going to enable us to offset the increase in traffic. Now, on that day, what we did not have was the technical work on highways. And luckily, the technical work on highways for the local plan came through on Thursday night. So I managed to read it last night. You know, this is how my week goes these days. My evenings are taken up in a really fun way. And last night, as I went through, and then this morning again, when I picked it up again and went through it, I tried to work out, what is he saying? Now, obviously, we unfortunately are going to have to go back and hire our transport consultant again. So we're going to have to come back and fundraise again, because what he's saying, it just doesn't bear the actual truth on the ground. And having looked through the report, and this is something that I will now, and we as a team now, will have to get into a question, and we will put that question into the committee next week. So Keith, you'll get the question, you'll hear the question next week. The chair of the committee next week will have to answer our question, we hope. And the question will be, A, why are you accepting a model that tells you that, firstly, the site is too far away to walk to key commuter points? It says that clearly, too far away to walk to key commuter points. Second, why are you accepting a model that tells you that only 14% of the people on that site, so 14% of the potential car ownership, and given that all houses are given an electric vehicle charger, that's 1,000 houses. So 14%, 140 of those are going to bother going to work between 7 and 9 in the morning, right? Peak hours, right? Only 140, because that housing is really cheap, isn't it? And it's going to be full of people who, I don't know, won the lottery maybe. That's why they don't go to work. So why are you accepting that as a figure? And then why, and this is the absolute, it makes me so cross. I'm not normally a cross person. It makes me so cross. Why are you, the council, stating that we have a deliverable, what they call active travel plan, which is a cycle route to you and I, from the Carla Holmes side? Because our expert, as you know, we've paid 3 times to show that that cycle route was not safe for cycling, was not deliverable because of the road width. Why? Why have you put that as your evidence that of that 14% that drive is okay, because overall 10% of us will then start cycling and take the cars off the road, and that will then net out to not very much of an effect. On the ancient Britain, which they've also described, the ancient Britain and the King William, as overcapacity already. So it just doesn't stack up. We have to, if I wrote in just as myself and pointed that out, officers should take note, but they don't. And that's why we're having to take this to an expert each time to write the same letter that we could have written. It's nuts. Absolutely nuts. So that's a question that will go in to the local plan committee next week from us. Why have they not taken that into account? How can they justify that? And their final word, I just wanted to bring it up because it makes me choke slightly. It's in my photos, and it is, hang on, my eyes a bit. It's all this screen time. Right, here we go. Overall, there are no showstoppers. I mean, I cannot understand how, given that transport data and transport report is not deliverable, how that assessment can be made. And it's not that we haven't told the council this already. We have already sent those details in. And that level of frustration from our core team, and then from our wider supporters, and then from everyone that lives around here, I think it's tangible, isn't it? I mean, we're so fed up of it. So I'll put it down to incompetence. Maybe the left hand can talk to the right hand. You know, we're sending in all the emails and the questions and the letters, and the only way I know Keith is because he knows that I go to all the local plan meetings and try to make the points that are needed to be made. So it's just really shocking, really, really shocking. Now, I have a lot more slides, but I'm not going to talk about too many of them because we've actually gone over a lot of the detail of them already. And what I'm going to do is put a little, so those are our expert reports. They are going to be online. I haven't had the time to upload them yet, but all of them, I'll make sure they're on our website, and I will send out an email link and you can see them all in detail. Those are the 3 we have already, and we're now being told our next step is to hire a barrister and hire a flood risk expert. I just take a deep breath, but that's what we're being advised. We think that this is the worst of speculative development, and again at the meeting on Tuesday, St Albans school advisors, so not the school themselves, but their advisors, Hallam Land Management, said that they will make an application ahead of the local plan. And so we said, well, that's a speculative application, and the school have committed not to make a speculative application. And he sat there, Ian sat there and said, well, I regret it because Carla got theirs through, effectively. And I think we all, again, another reason to be highly depressed, that the school are being given that advice, and it's just so inappropriate. Their reasoning, his reasoning was, well, it carries this legal term, substantial weight, because it's already in the local plan. And so at which point we turned out and said, well, the last local plan was thrown out at a stage that's later than it is right now. So you're basically not going to wait for it. And at any point, given what we know about your site, those 4 key issues, flooding, highways, etc., your site could be thrown out. But you're going to go for it anyway. I think there was silence at that point, wasn't there? And we all just looked at each other. I have asked the school to meet again to discuss what happened at the meeting. Carla and L&G are some of the biggest landowners in our area. And certainly in the local plan, as a proportion, they have the most to gain. So their sites and their potential connectivity to other sites, they are one of the biggest gainers of the local plan. Carla's up for sale. Whether that happens or not, we don't know. But it certainly is up for sale. And then we've talked about the situation. Lynn's given us an update on the planning issues. Those are our meeting dates coming forward. So actually it's September the 23rd is the final selection for those sites in the local plan, which is 1 day before the closure of the NPPF. And we've spoken about what's important with the local plan. I'm going to leave the slide of the NPPF up and actually turn it over to Richard and say, Richard, come up and give us some help with the NPPF. So about 2 years ago, just after our judicial review, Clash and a couple of the other organisations in St Albans joined up to the London Greenbelt Council because our Greenbelt is Metropolitan Greenbelt, and we've got a couple of people here today who are part of that organisation, and the support has been invaluable, the technical support. None of us do this for a day job, right? We're having to learn, but Rich's got loads of experience.